Hi you guys, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we're going to speak about Black culture, and you're going to watch me get ready. I have a meeting at 12, and then I have two interviews later on tonight because of the time difference. So one I believe is at 9:30 and the second is at 10:30. And so honestly, I don't even know why I'm wearing makeup for the 12 o'clock prep. I don't think that I'm going to wear makeup for the 12 o'clock prep because after 12, I'm going to want to take this makeup off. I'm not going to want to have it on for another 10 hours or so. So this will not be a get ready with me video, but it will be a video in which I speak about Black culture. So you guys know that I am like just very into diversity. I like telenovelas, I like C-dramas, I like K-dramas. I haven't watched a Japanese drama yet, but back in middle school, your girl used to watch anime. Yes, I used to watch anime. Yeah, I used to watch anime. This is before I knew anybody else was really in America on anime. So this was back in like 2000 and maybe 2003. Oh my goodness. Yes, this was years ago. I used to watch anime. I even introduced my dad and my brother to anime and they started watching it, okay? So I just like diversity. Like, I like diversity. But you know what I realized lately with diversity? There comes a challenge, especially when dating interracially or cross-culturally. And what I mean is this. I have been watching a lot of YouTube just because I'm counting the days until I move across the country. Well, not across the country, across the world. I move, right? I'm waiting for my documents to come back and then I'll be gone. So anyways, what I realized is that yes, we all have a culture, but when dating interracially or cross-culturally, what I find is that the male figure in the relationship typically just automatically assumes that the woman, if the woman is not of the same culture, will have to and must assimilate to that culture. And I kind of feel like Black women all over the world, when dating internationally, kind of get shortchanged, and then Asian women, when dating in the States with someone who is not culturally Asian, they kind of get shortchanged when Asian women date white men. And I know because I worked in Silicon Valley. I don't know personally, but I worked in Silicon Valley and I worked with a lot of engineers and they love Asian women. So Asian women, if you like white men, move to San Jose. I mean, don't move just for that. You got to make sure you're making good money because San Jose is expensive. Like a studio is about $3,000 a month. Yeah, and if you want to live in a nice or decent neighborhood. So, and so I would hear some of the things that the engineers, my white friends who were engineers too, would say about like Asian women, and it was like they never even considered the culture of Asian women. And it was kind of like, I find that with a lot of men, and so this is what prompted me to want to speak about Black culture. I can't speak about Asian culture because I ain't Asian, okay? But I can speak about Black culture. Now, what exactly is Black culture? I think a lot of people think Black culture is rap music and twerking, and that's because that is what they have chosen to highlight. In every culture, there is things that people do well and people do not do so well. What I find within the world is that they want to take the 20%, hypothetically speaking, I'm giving a 20%, number. They want to highlight the 20% of negativity possibly in the Black culture and let that be the face of Black culture. Meaning, yes, there are Black women who twerk, but there are white women who twerk. There are probably not as many Asian women who twerk, but there could possibly be a high percentage of Asian women who twerk, right? So why is it that when it comes to looking at the Black culture and Black women, the twerking is what identifies Black women or Black culture for what it is? Do you understand? Like 80% of Black culture, hypothetically speaking, cannot be about twerking, but what society does is highlight the 20% and slap that on the image of Black people. I know a lot of Black women who have no rhythm. Okay, I don't know a lot, but I know at least one Black person ain't got no rhythm, okay? And so what you'll be surprised to hear, especially if you are not from America or have not visited America, is the fact that Black women are the most educated and have increased their education more than any other people group, right? So that's not highlighted, right? And so I have a video on YouTube, and it is titled POC, Why Do We Believe the Stereotypes About Other People of Color? And if I can remember, I'll just have it pop up here so that you can click on it, because I believe that what I'm saying ties into that video so much. So what is Black culture? Now, in order to understand Black culture, we have to understand U.S. slavery, because a lot of Black culture, our Black culture in America, and when I say Black, when I say Black culture, let me just specify, I mean Black American culture. I can't speak for Black people in Europe. I can't speak for Black people in Africa. I just can only speak for Black people in America. I can't speak for Black people in like Puerto Rico or whatever. Puerto Rican is now. Okay, so or Brazil, for instance. I can't speak about Black people in Brazil because I don't have, culturally, even though we may look alike, we have different cultures. So I'm talking about Black American culture. So U.S. slavery, 1600s, from the 1600s to 1865, so almost 300 years, Black people were raped, they were murdered, they were forced to do indecent things. They didn't have freedom physically, they didn't have freedom mentally, they didn't have freedom spiritually. And so even when slave owners would feed the Black slaves, they would give them the part of the food, like the food parts of the animals that were like not edible. And so the Black slaves would season it and cook it a certain way to kind of make it tasty, because they were basically given the scraps, right? And so even after slavery ended in 1865, then there were laws put into place to prevent Black people from buying homes, buying land, starting businesses, and being successful in society, also reading. And then the Jim Crow laws and the Black codes became illegal in 1964, but it didn't stop there. This is where white privilege continued on, where the beauty standards were catered to white people, so that, for instance, professionalism in the 1980s was whatever white women and men looked like during those days. So in 2019, California became the first state to make it illegal not to hire someone just because they have natural hair. 2019. Okay, you understand. So so our culture has a lot to do with what we did during U.S. slavery to survive, from food to the basic entertainment we could have during those days without being murdered, raped, and etc. And so I'm gonna give you examples to make this real clear. So during those days, one of the ways that female slaves connected, I'm going to cry, with their parents is through hair braiding, and this continued on even until now. And so to be transparent, when I see white women wear like certain hairstyles, some people are like, oh, it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. You don't understand what it means to Black people culturally, and you also don't understand how when you wear it, you're not ridiculed. It's looked at as trendy and cool. But then when I wear something that's a part of my culture, then I am persecuted and considered to be ghetto for it. And so I'm just like, you have this hairstyle and you don't even understand like the sentiment behind it. It's a time of communication. It's a time of family. It's a time where your parents have that talk with you about, succeeding in this world. And so it means something. And this is what I don't think a lot of non-Black people understand. Another part of Black culture obviously is the dancing. So the dancing, again, in America, it was a form of entertainment. It was a form of interpersonal communication. It was a time of gathering, and so when we have family reunions in the Black community and we get gathered together, one of the things we like to do is sing and dance because of the joy it brings. And that started with during slavery and after the abolishment of slavery. Now every culture may have specific dances and traditional movements that they do, but somehow our dances are looked at as wild and not appropriate. The thing is that when I call it culture, people may call it ratchet or ghetto or inappropriate. But imagine if I went to Asia, or I went to Brazil is a little similar, or I went to Europe and I called something that culturally I can't understand as an American inappropriate just because it's a different way of doing things, right? So Black culture is not only about the way that we do things, but it's the reason behind why we do what we do, right? And so I want, in the description area below, what I'm going to do is I'm going to list a couple of 90s movies, 90s music, maybe even 60s, 70s. And what I want you to do is listen to it. Especially, obviously, if you're non-Black, you may not understand the significance of it, but just remember the racism and the discrimination and the segregation and the slavery, the Jim Crow laws that happened. So when watching these movies and seeing a person of color that looks like you in these movies, in these fields, it means something to us because we have been ostracized not only in the United States, but around the world, right? And so when watching these movies, because you can't if you're not Black, you're probably not going to understand this culturally. It's what you'll have to do is kind of take off the negative perspective that you may have of Black culture or Black people, and then be objective. And that's not easy for a lot of people, especially if you're so used to believing everything that the media says, everything that have been fed to you by your parents because they believe what the media says. So with some of the movies that I'm going to recommend, you have to understand. For instance, one of the movies that I'm going to recommend is Boys in the Hood, okay? Now, if you watch this movie, you may be just like, why would this movie be so popular in the black community? You may even think, well, do all black people live in the hood? And the answer to that question is, does all Asian people live in the hood? Do all Latin people live in the hood? Do all white people live in the hood? Obviously, not all black people live in the hood, but the reason why this is popular is because systemically, black people have been dispositioned to be in positions that doesn't benefit them because society doesn't deem black people as competent. They view black people as replaceable. And so the way that America dealt with slavery was horrible. It also trickled down into different facets of life. So healthcare, they were, for instance, when doctors were creating vaccinations and different medications, they would illegally give black patients medication and use them as test dummies. So this slavery and this racism, discrimination trickled down in healthcare, in the judicial system. There's a book called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. If you're interested in reading that, read that. She's a lawyer and she speaks about the judicial system and how it is built to negatively impact black people. So this systemic racism and oppression, it's in different facets. So again, beauty, for instance, when you look at actresses, black actresses, women of color in the 1970s, 80s in Hollywood, the shade of color, their makeup shade didn't fit them because there were not brands who wanted to create shades that would suit black women. It was just like literally like one shade, right? And so beauty in the judicial system, in the educational system, because remember, at first black and white people couldn't even go to the same school. They couldn't even dine at the same restaurant. Black people used to have to sit on the back of the bus. And so this was like the hell that black people faced in like the 1900s up until like the 1970s, but now we're still facing it, but in other ways that may not be as shown as prevalent, right? And so when you watch Boys in the Hood, you have to understand that people are born into families and into a socioeconomic status that they did not choose. And the nuclear environment does play an impact into the way that you see life and the way that you treat other people. And sometimes what I would see, like, for instance, I'll see like someone who's extremely ghetto, like, let's say hypothetically a black person. And I remember having a conversation with someone and they were like, oh my goodness, why is she acting like that? And I'm just like, you could have been born in her family or his family. You could have been born socioeconomically disprivileged. But God chose you to be born in your family. And you don't know what this person has been through. And so when I see them at ghetto, I'm not ashamed or embarrassed by it. Same thing with poor people. How dare I make fun of a poor person? Even though my childhood was not easy, they could have had a childhood that was that much harder and difficult. And so when watching Boys in the Hood, just remember U.S. slavery, Jim Crow laws, black codes, white privilege, the systematic racism from beauty industry, from the judicial system, from the educational system, from the health system. Remember how all of these are impacted. And then you have Boys in the Hood, which I believe is such a great movie. Now I'm going to list a whole bunch of good movies that I think every black person can really vouch for. Black shows, black movies, black music in the description area below so you can understand. So again, when I speak about these shows and I talk about these shows, I don't want you to look at it from the standpoint of, okay, this is everyone in the Black community. Again, is everyone in the Asian community rich? Is everyone in the Asian community attractive? Is everyone in the Asian community well-mannered? No. So the same thing is true in the white community and the Black community and every other, culture, right? And so when watching these movies, it's about the meaning behind it. It's not what you see at face value, right? It's about the meaning behind it that really resonate with Black people. Now, I can watch Boys in the Hood, and just because I didn't grow up in the hood doesn't mean that I can't resonate with the Black culture behind it, because there's a deeper message, and that's what makes Black movies with predominantly Black actresses and actors so powerful to us, is because of the message behind it. And so when for instance, if I recommend Martin, don't think that every Black person, every Black woman is like Shanae. No, that she represents a percentage. But the beauty about Martin is that there are different characters, and not every Black person is associated with one of the different characters. There's a variety. And so as a non-Black person, when you watch these shows, movies, or listen to this music, you have to understand what's behind it to really understand why we think it's so valuable to our culture. So we're already 21 minutes in. I typically like to make these videos 15 minutes long, but I got into it. I didn't do my makeup, and I didn't even fix my wig. You guys know this is a wig because I cut my hair off. But I enjoyed this conversation, and you know what? I would be interested in more videos like this from the Asian community, from the Latin community, from the white community, to understand what your culture is and what it means to you. And I believe that having videos like this will give people understanding of just how to treat humans like humans. I'll be honest, there was one video that I watched from like a Korean studio in South Korea, and they were asking questions about like Black culture and like Black women. And in this maybe 15-minute video, they showed Black women on a boat twerking in thongs like 3 times, and I literally cringed. Because what they did is they took like the 20% example that I gave you before, the 20% out of the Black community who does these things, and they highlighted it and basically made every Black woman fit into that stereotype. And so that's dangerous, because then they're further perpetrating a stereotype that is just a stereotype, right? It's kind of like me saying that every Asian person or every Latin person or every white person is this. Even though there are people within that community that may do this, it doesn't mean that every single person in that community is that way. And so I literally cringed. I was just like, oh my goodness, somebody, Jesus, take the wheel. Jesus, take the wheel. So yeah, if you like this video, comment below, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Instagram, like this video, and I'm going to conclude today's episode. If you have any questions about Black culture, I didn't really get to cover everything because I know you guys don't like super long videos, but I think I covered the basics. So I'll see you later. Okay.